Welcome to Creators Cafe. I'm your host, Jessica Payne. I'm a performer, performance coach, and multi-hyphenate creator. I'm going to be bringing you conversations with some of my favorite creators where we talk about the sublime and the specifics of the creative journey. So grab a drink, get cozy. Let's go. My guest, Robin Nyström, is an LA-based filmmaker who was born in Stockholm and raised on a steady diet of Swedish meatballs and ABBA. As a writer, Robin loves to explore absurdist comedy and magical realism. His first independently produced web series, Nicolife, follows a wannabe influencer hoping to find YouTube fame at any cost. His second web series, Tracy Buckles, depicts a young woman who became the victim of a curse that prevents other people from hearing her voice. He is also the writer-director of multiple short films, including Broken, Super Psycho Killerbot from Outer Space, and his most recent, Judged. I was first introduced to Robin because he's married to my second cousin, Jenny, and Jenny and I have a brief starring moment as background extras in Judged, which I think makes me a Nepo baby now. I love how Robin blends his European perspective with his twinkle-in-the-eye magical realism, and I hope you'll love my conversation with Robin Nyström. Cheers.
Cheers.
Welcome to Creators Cafe, Robin Nyström.
Thank you.
And could you please say your name for everyone, the full name, because I love it.
Well, my full name is Robin Kjell Gustav Nyström. But that's just, the name I was given when I was born in Sweden.
Yes.
But yes.
Exactly.
I normally don't make people say all those four names.
So the Americanized version is Robin Nyström.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah,
okay.
Just Robin. That's perfect.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
And what are you drinking today?
Today, this is one of my faves. It's an oat milk cappuccino.
It looked really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, because I like to make coffee at home, but if I go to a cafe or a coffee shop, I want them to make something that I can't make at home. I don't have an espresso machine. And therefore, why not cappuccino?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm drinking an iced latte, and I'm the same way. Like, I like my coffee at home, but I can't make good espresso. So, yeah. Cheers.
Nice. All right.
And this is from Dialogue, right across the street.
Very good. I like that.
So, how do you think about yourself as an artist? I know it's evolved.
Yeah. I would say I'm mainly a writer-director. That's kind of what it has boiled down to over time, yeah.
What did you kind of start off with thinking of yourself as an artist?
It just depends on how far you want to go back.
Just like where in the journey. Okay, so let me ask you. So
I would say I've always been a writer first. So I've never really even directed anything that I haven't written. So I don't really have much experience with that. But yeah, I'm a writer first. That was kind of like my first passion as a kid, I guess, after reading. I did have to read before I wrote, but and then I got into theater and eventually got into film. We just had one of those like old mini VHS cameras that my parents had for, really it was meant for like capturing birthdays and vacations and things like that, but eventually I kind of took it over and we started shooting skits and stuff like that with neighborhood kids and whatever. But so then the filmmaking came with that. But yeah, over time, I think it always starts with the writing for me. So it's like that's always going to be a part of it. And then eventually, if I think what I've written is good enough and something I want to work on for an extended period of time, then I figure out how to direct it and how to produce it.
Yeah. When you went to film school in Sweden, do they have specialties or do you just go to film school?
Yeah, I mean, because I didn't go to it wasn't like an accredited college, kind of like full 4-year thing. It was more of a trade school. So it was I think it was 18 months or 2 years where you went at night. So you were meant to be like having a normal day job.
Got it.
And then you went to film school at night, And it really was it was not very much film theory, it was mostly just practical. Like we made short films, but it's like, the first few months we started with still photography and then we moved into just all the different disciplines of filmmaking, and throughout we just kept making short films. So after the 2 years, maybe you had at least a handful of short films you had made.
That's great, because I know a lot of programs actually lean the opposite direction, where it's very theory based and you watch a lot of people's stuff, but then you don't have that body of work that you've made. Now that you've been in the States for so long, are you noticing that there's big differences between maybe both the Swedish style of filmmaking and kind of what you learned and how you approach things versus how people here that you work with approach things?
Yeah, probably. I mean, there's certainly a difference in how I approach things.
Oh, that's true, right? Yeah, you don't have to speak for the country.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I mean, because I do have I worked a little bit in production in Sweden, but I would say a pretty limited experience with that. It's just such, Sweden is just such a small country, so it's like, the productions are way smaller than anything here in the US. And often, like, movies in Europe are co-financed by, like, multiple, like, production companies from multiple countries, and stuff like that. So there are certain, like, financial, limitations to the kind of projects you can do, in Sweden. But beyond that, like, on a more personal level, film school for me was just about having the time and space where I could just make a lot of mistakes, essentially.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
With each short film, I really thought I knew what I was doing. And then, when I would watch it, would find myself incredibly disappointed. And not even because it's like, it's just so interesting when you work so hard on something, you really want it to be so good, and even get together a good team of people, good actors, whatever it is. And then you watch it and you realize, oh yeah, that's why you don't write dialogue like that, because it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters now because it's just bad. So I feel like every short film I did in film school, I had one of those, like, realizations about a personal realization about where I was falling short of my own kind of expectations and ambitions and whatever, and I just wasn't living up to what was in my head. I wasn't able to execute.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And I think that is what I'm most grateful, for about film school, is that it just gave me just time and space to make a lot of mistakes as quickly as possible over 2 years. So that by the time I got out of film school and started doing more independent projects, I felt like all of a sudden what I was making was much closer to my intention, to what I was seeing in my head or what I was actually wanted to do, as opposed to, like, this misshapen, strange thing that I had birthed that really had little to do with the beautiful idea that was in my head,
Exactly.
So, yeah, that was film school for me. And so that is because I moved to the U.S. shortly after film school. That's sort of how things are different for me personally, in Sweden, it was just film school making mistakes. And here it was actually like starting to, execute on all the things I had learned. And yeah.
I think that's great, because a lot of people get stuck when they see that gap, because we all have that gap of trying to make something and then realizing how far away it is from what you see in your head.
Totally.
And a lot of people stop because they put so much time into this one thing and then it looks nothing like it. So they'll do maybe one more and it's maybe a few percentage points better. And I think the trick is really to just keep making things so that you do get better. It's very like Silicon Valley too, of just make something that you can ship, know that it's going to have mistakes, and then fix it. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when you got to the States, what did you kind of first dive into creatively?
Well, I didn't. I honestly, I was very burnt out after film school, and I thought maybe but I've had these, there are these cycles I go through where after a certain period of time of being in production a lot, I tend to want to just go back to writing and not really deal with the realities of a film set, of, managing a lot of people and resources and all these things. That can be pretty draining, you know? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I just spent many years, probably 5 years just writing, you know, before I got back into production again.
Okay. Was your first big project Nicolife?
Yes.
Okay. How did that one come about?
Well, it really just came about, I mean, at that point in time, I wasn't necessarily looking to do anything like that. But I just ended up meeting the right people, really what I met at first was a director of photography that I really liked. And then from there, we kind of like started expanding a team of people. And so I think that was it. It was kind of like, you know, I like the aspect of writing because you're just in complete control of your craft and your art, you know. You have your words on the page and that's it. And, you know, but then once you're going to expand that into production, now it's no longer just you and your words, you know. Now it's you got to put together a team, you know. Now you got to play as a band instead of, you're not a solo act anymore. That's kind of how I see it. And so it was really about that I just happened to start meeting the right people, and from there I saw potential. Okay, with these people, if I work with these people, I could maybe make something interesting. So yeah, it sort of started there. It didn't start with an idea. It started with collaborators, and then ideas came from there.
That's cool.
And then Nicolife, yeah, that was essentially a web series that we made over the course of 3 years. Mm-hmm. And we all had like full-time day jobs and everything, but yeah, so we would just shoot on, not even consistently like every weekend or anything like that, but you know, over time off that we had, and I would write one episode at a time and we would shoot it, and altogether it became 6 episodes, and I think it spans like a runtime of pretty much like a feature length thing, you know. It's like 90 minutes or something if you watch it all together.
And it's fun because over the span of that, you get the kind of you as the main protagonist goes from kind of this innocuous, just annoying YouTuber kind of figure to someone far more dangerous and dark, and yet you keep this really fun tone. So it's cool to know that underneath that you were spending 3 years of just making things, that it wasn't a unified story from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I do think that when we started making the first episode, I had the overall arc figured out. In fact, I had an arc that went even further than what we shot. You know? So I think we got about halfway through my original plan. So all that I had from when. Oh, okay. So it did.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
But I didn't pre-write the episode, so I just like, okay, I know where we're going, but let me just start with the first one. We shot that. Let me do the second one. So it sort of changed and evolved, but like where we ended up was exactly where I had decided that we were going when we, you know, 3 years earlier when we started shooting episode 1. That was all kind of like part of it. And I think like, you know, with Nicolife, which is about, it really is about a wannabe influencer. Mm-hmm. But the funny thing is when we made this, because originally we shot this was like, you know, 10 years ago now, but it's like, we shot it before there was even a word like influencer.
Yes.
You know, so this had just kind of started, this idea of a YouTube personality.
Yeah.
So
and what people would do for that kind of, for the likes and for the fame. Exactly.
So I think like, I did want to do some kind of commentary on what I saw as kind of this trend that was growing, and that now is something that is so much bigger than what it was when we made Nicolife. So, I mean, in that way, it's still sort of relevant. But the other thing was, I was just, you know, a European. I was born in Sweden who had just moved to the U.S. And I had just made all these kind of observations about life here in this country. And I decided to try to kind of deal with some of these internal conflicts I had about, you know, things in this country by giving a lot of opinions to this main character that I happen to play. And pretty much most of the opinions that he expresses in this web series are kind of the polar opposite of my own personal beliefs.
Yeah.
And it was just very interesting to, you know, you would think that, like, you know, because I feel like a tendency that, like, younger writer, it's easy to get a little preachy. You have some kind of opinion, and so you give those opinions to your characters so they can sort of tell everybody in the world how important XYZ is.
Yeah.
And because I felt a little rebellious, I sort of decided to go the opposite way, which is what turns it into more of a satire or a comedy, you know, which is like, just have a character voice just the polar opposite views that I held at that time, and kind of see how people would react to that. You know, it was sort of a way for me to explore, you know, what it felt like to come to a new country and live in a new country and be faced with all these kind of new opinions.
Yeah. And I, you know, kind of coming from the acting side of it, knowing that you consider yourself a writer-director, you still starred in and held the protagonist role of this series so well. And I loved watching you because I know you so well and I know that this isn't you. So it's fascinating to see you getting to kind of embody this person that is so far away from what I normally see you as. And I think that's actually a really effective tool for actors and writers, to just that idea of what is the opposite? What's the opposite of your natural home base? What's the opposite of what I actually believe? And just kind of lean into that to explore it. Maybe not particularly with Nicolife, but I think sometimes then you come away with a sense of like either empathy or at least understanding where somebody's coming from, even if you don't change your beliefs. So I think that's one of the cool things about art, but also was just like really effective because it gave you such a change. You had to find a way to justify those sides of that character, which was fun.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, in many ways, art is that playground where I always feel like it is one of the safest places where you can explore things that maybe you should not be exploring in your real life, you know, because that would be very bad.
Exactly.
So that's why I can be pretty extreme and violent and sort of crazy in my art. I feel like I like to embrace that because I don't really want to do those things in my own life, you know. And at the same time, so how are you going to have some expression for these like darker parts of yourself or crazier, wilder parts of yourself, you know?
Yeah.
We all need those outlets somehow in our life, you know?
Yeah.
And I just feel like art is that's just the most exciting place for it, for me.
Yeah, absolutely. What then took you to the Tracy Buckles storyline?
Yeah, so Tracy Buckles was another web series that we made, pretty much the same team of people who made Nicolife. And a lot of it was kind of like, trying to course correct a little bit because like we had made this extremely ambitious web series that were like 10 or 20 minute long episodes. And that's not necessarily what people are looking for when they go to YouTube or something like that. And, you know, really then you're competing with Netflix and just any show that's out there, you know, because they're just too long. So I felt like it would be interesting to maybe tell a story across 6 very short episodes that were like between 4 and 5 minutes. And so that was kind of just an idea of a different type of web series format that I was interested in. And then that was then combined with my love for fantasy, which is just something I've loved since I was a kid, like Lord of the Rings and, you know, stuff like that. It was just pretty much all that I read, you know, growing up. And I felt like there was an opportunity to do like a kind of a different type of fantasy comedy than what we've seen before. And yeah, so that's, and then, you know, one day I was going on a walk and this entire kind of story came to me.
Oh, that's cool.
From like when I started the walk, I didn't really have the story other than a very vague idea of something, more of a premise, but not really a story, you know? And then at the end of the walk, I had everything. All the characters were in it and everything. It just sort of came. So I mean, it normally doesn't really work like that, but every now and then it does. And when it does, I'll take it. Catch the lightning in the bottle and you just go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know, did you do anything? I guess the question is like, is there anything that you would recommend to yourself or somebody else to put yourself in a position to be open to that happening? Like a lot of people get ideas when they're walking, or were you already just like starting to ask yourself a lot of questions? Or, I mean, you do walk a lot, so I think it's great.
I walk a lot. Yeah, I say take a lot of walks. That's probably the key.
I love it.
No, I mean, you know, I mean, I think you pretty much just said it. Yeah, I think, you just have to be open to it. And, I mean, I think probably anyone who's like, a writer might identify with this, but it's like part of it is just allowing yourself and giving yourself time to kind of daydream, to kind of just let your mind wander, And every story has some beginning, in your mind. I'm not talking about the actual literal beginning of the story, but some kernel of something in your mind that you were intrigued by or thought, oh, there could be something there, And what that is always different. That's the thing. It's like, for me at least.
Yeah.
It could be a character. It could be an image. It could be... Sometimes I'm working on something right now it's just like the form of it, it's like the kind of structure of it, the way the story is told. It's almost like you have, you're just like building these walls around something, but you don't really know what's going to go inside of the thing you're building, You
see the shape before the definition.
Exactly. Okay. And it's like, so, but it all is different. But the point is, what you allow yourself to do is when you have something that seems to kind of catch your attention, is just to allow yourself to start kind of daydreaming and imagining and okay, so what else is there, and you just kind of start asking yourself questions. And it, the more you learn about the thing, then you can see, because the other thing I find is like for me, there are two types of ideas. I feel like I get ideas all the time. And I think everyone gets ideas. But the issue with filmmaking in particular, because filmmaking is very like, it's a big project to take on, to make a film. Even if you're making a short film, it's just a lot of resources, people's time and money and, like equipment, technology, different stages, pre-production, production, post-production. It's just a lot of time and effort. So what I'm really trying to figure out is this an idea that's going to carry me through the next year, potentially, whatever, maybe even more, maybe a little less depending on what the project is, but still, it's going to be an extended period of time, because that's really what's required, So that's why I try to not really rush going from idea to production. That I like to just take my time with. Let's just see. Let's see how I feel about this when I think about this next week, Am I still excited when I think about this idea? Or is it kind of starting to fade,
Yeah.
It's almost like some of that electric energy that was there yesterday when I was in the shower. It's like, now it's like, I don't know. It seems like there's something better over here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just kind of like sit with your own ideas, and because they will come. They always do. They always come. And then, sit with them and allow yourself to kind of revisit them and daydream and imagine things, ask yourself questions about them, and see if it's a sticky idea, it will stay with you, and you will carry it with you. It's like a seed, it will just keep growing. If you just keep revisiting it, keep feeding it just with your thoughts and see, and, But yeah, that I think a lot of people just do it naturally. I would imagine, But honestly, I do think a lot of it has to do with time. Because I know, like, when I had, like, the kind of day job that was very demanding, both, like, in terms of how much time I spent at this job, but also, like, it was kind of where I felt drained at the end of the day. I didn't have a lot of creative energy. My output was just much lesser, It's like, so ultimately, it's also like, can you build pockets of time into your schedule where you allow yourself to just be and take a walk, or go down to the beach, or go to a cafe, or listen to music, or whatever it is that gets you kind of to feel a little more connected, a little more vibrant, a little more alive. Whatever that is, figure out how you can do that in your own life. Figure out how you can expand those moments of time. That, I think, is the hardest thing to figure out, or was for me, like early on, is I was very hard on myself for not being productive enough, but I just didn't have enough time.
Yeah, and even if you have the time, if you don't have the energy, then it counts as you don't have the time.
Yeah.
You don't have the resources that you need to be creative.
You got to rest and recharge, and exactly, it's like until you actually get to that place. So, yeah, those are the things I would focus on is, to be open, just do everything you can to adjust your schedule, if possible, to allow for that openness to happen.
I think that's a great goal. And a lot of people are trying to shove in projects, but even shoving in time to make the projects worthwhile is a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
Are you ready to be confident and comfortable in front of a camera? Well, my name is Jessica Payne, and I would love to help you. I'm an actor, acting coach, and the host of the Creators Cafe video podcast. I have helped thousands of people to learn the skills of a Hollywood actor to be more comfortable in their body, voice, and mindset whenever you press record. So if you're an entrepreneur, a business person who needs to be in front of the camera, or you want to get into digital content creation, I would love to offer you one-on-one on-camera performance coaching so that you feel like when you press record, you can be your best self. Check out the link below for more details, and I can't wait to work with you. Let's have fun together. Super Psycho Killer Bot from Outer Space.
Yes.
Fantastic. Tell me all about it.
Well, I think that just, after I had done, a couple of these web series that were pretty large projects, because it's essentially like every web series I made was like making at least 6 short films.
Yeah.
So together it was like making 12 shorts back to back. And so I honestly took a lot of time off from production. Once again, I was in my writing phase where I just took a number of years just writing.
Yeah.
And then eventually I slowly started getting into production, and I kind of did that almost like by tricking myself into making little creative exercises. Like I didn't put so much emphasis on making like these really big productions that involved a lot of cast and crew and stuff. Mm-hmm. So Super Psycho Killer Bot from Outer Space was one of those kind of smaller projects that came together pretty quickly. But essentially, that one was one of the few where I like wrote and directed it and also shot it myself, like just on an iPhone.
Yeah.
So, but just that freedom of being able to, use my normal phone that I use in my, like normal life to make phone calls, to shoot a little short film. And I wanted to do, it's a horror comedy, but I wanted to do something that was kind of like a tribute or an homage or something like that to some of the Saturday morning cartoons, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something. Yeah. Which is why it has such a long title, or Micro Mice from Mars, or one of those kind of ridiculous 90s or early 2000 ones. But so Super Psycho Killer Bot from Outer Space. We literally just shot it in our apartment and shot it on my iPhone. Came together very quickly. And it's one of those like kind of palate cleanser, projects that it just felt lower stakes, which is kind of nice sometimes, Yeah. Sometimes you like just build up your level of anticipation and expectation so high that it feels like, life or death. It's like, we got to get this right, Yeah. And every now and then you need a project that it's like, well, okay, if it doesn't work out, I think we'll be fine.
Exactly.
But I think it turned out fun, and
it's so fun.
Yeah.
And you basically like saran wrapped your whole apartment.
Yes.
Which is
we kind of had to work backwards from the ending. So it is a horror comedy, and things get very gory. Essentially, there's a lot of blood and guts, and
it's nasty in a really fun way.
Yeah, and just in a very over the top kind of way. And the whole thing was that because I knew that for this little project we weren't going to be able to like rent out some big location or anything, and I knew no one would let me shoot this in their home. Yes. Because of the amount of just blood.
They
fake
shouldn't.
Blood.
No.
So I was like, okay, we got to do it in our apartment. But then, like, we have like, carpets and furniture, and like, okay, it's like if we really want to be able to spray this all over the place, how do we deal with that? So we kind of just worked backwards from that problem. We realized if we can just wrap our entire bedroom in plastic, then at the end of the production, we can just wrap it all up and be done.
Yep.
But the thing is, to kind of give that some logic, but why is the bedroom, wrapped in plastic? We had the character whose home we're inside of, we had him sort of wrap his entire apartment just so that it's not like when you get to the bloody part, everything is wrapped in plastic.
Yeah.
Everything is just wrapped in plastic from the moment you get into this apartment.
Yeah.
And eventually you end up in the bedroom where all the blood and guts, start spraying everywhere. But yeah, so it was kind of it became an interesting little problem because Super Psycho Killer Bot is it's a guy whose boyfriend is, it's a guy whose brother is dating what he believes to be an alien. Mm-hmm. She looks like a human, but he believes that she comes from a different planet. And none of his friends really believe him. He thinks he's crazy. What are you talking about? She's just a normal person. But see, he's kind of paranoid about, like, if she's some otherworldly being, who knows what kind of, like, bacteria or viruses she could be spreading, or, like, we don't know what kind of creature this is.
Yeah.
So that, I was kind of thinking about E.T., where those scientists show up and the way they treat E.T., like with Elliot, and E.T. is just in the family's home and interact with, with the kids and everything. But when the scientists show up, they have these, like, everything is in plastic. They're all in hazmat suits.
Yeah.
And so I was sort of thinking of him as kind of overreacting, similarly to the scientists in E.T.,
Yeah.
But that was just honestly my justification, because it just came from conversations with the other producers and a person that we collaborated with, Jersey, who did all the gore and everything. Mm-hmm. So, it was kind of a collaboration with her and everybody that we figured out to wrap everything in plastic. But I kind of visually liked it too. It sort of lent it an interesting look inside the apartment. I don't recommend it, though. I mean, I recommend it for the cleanup, but it takes way longer than you think, okay?
Yeah.
To say something like, hey, should we just plastic wrap our apartment? That sounds good until you get going.
I really,
it takes forever.
I appreciate with you that you are the person who's writing the story, but you also know that you're going to be directing it and editing it and the person on set and everything. And so you really, when you write something, you're not just writing it and like, oh, well, somebody else is going to have to deal with it. Like, you're the somebody that's going to have to deal with it. Yeah. And so when you, like, find the solve, it's great, and it's going to affect so many things. So I think it's good for people to have that chance to do every step of the process so they understand why those decisions are made and how much can come out of it, too.
Totally. Yeah, but that was a fun one.
What, if it doesn't give too many secrets away, there was some edible gore. What was that made out of?
Well, it was Jersey that I worked with. Everything was edible. Okay. And nothing was like, everything was just stuff she made in her kitchen.
Okay.
So I don't know, all the stuff that went in it. It was like Jell-O and,
I'll just say things looked anatomically correct and yet were edible. Yes. And so it was pretty, if you're a sensitive stomach, maybe don't watch this one. But otherwise, I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, it was, she ended up like making fake body parts, fake bodies. It's like she made all this stuff, but everything was edible that the actors had to put in their mouths. Yeah, maybe with the exception. Well, no, yeah, maybe with some slight exception, but pretty much everything was designed so that, and also designed so it wouldn't taste bad, because that's the other thing. A lot of stuff you buy that's like pre-made, it's like, you can put this in your mouth, but it's not going to taste good, You
don't want to.
Yeah, so what she made was not only did it look great on camera, but it was actually very tasty.
That's fantastic.
So it was awesome. Yeah, it was a good experience.
That's cool. And then you made another micro horror short the year before as well. Do you want to talk about that? Yeah,
exactly. So I made another short film that was another horror one. This one didn't have a comedy aspect to it, but it was called Broken.
Yeah.
And it was, speaking of how art can be a safe playground for working out some things that are going on inside of you. Yeah. I had just dealt with a pretty major medical issue. And it was essentially I had to have open heart surgery.
Yeah.
And it just happened very unexpectedly. It was not something that was, on my calendar for something to do that particular year. But it just so happened that, it was just a situation where it had to be done. And, it went well, and the recovery was, it took a number of months for me to kind of physically become independent again and be able to kind of move around and do all the things that I've sort of took for granted up to that point, all the things that I normally just, get out of bed and get dressed and all these things. So just kind of being faced with that, being faced with, honestly, the idea of your own mortality, being faced with a lot of things that can happen when you're dealing with a medical issue like that. I did go a little bit to therapy and I did some things, but I think the main thing I did is I literally, within 3 months of having this open heart surgery, I made a short film about it.
That you started and show your scar, and it's just so vulnerable and powerful. And, having gone through my liver donation surgery, I feel like I'm in the club of people who have faced their mortality much sooner than they expected to and gone through this kind of life-changing, crazy, scary experience. And so watching it for me was really powerful too, just to have that kind of shared experience in that kind of way. And that's something that I now I'm able to write about, but it took me years to kind of get on the other side of it. So the fact that you did it, created it, produced it, starred in it within 3 months was so wild to me. That was awesome and shocking.
Yeah. Again, none of that was planned in any way. So I think it was just, it was one of those things. Sometimes you just have an inner sense of what you need to deal with something that's going on in your life.
Yeah.
And it may not make sense to a lot of people around you. I mean, thankfully it made sense to my partner, Jenny, who... It was literally just the two of us that made this. Yeah. I shot it on the iPhone. She starred in it. I starred in it a little bit. And during that short scene that I starred in it, I had to tape the iPhone up to the wall because there was no one there to shoot. It was just such a personal thing. It was also the only project I've ever done where I didn't write a script.
Yeah.
There was sort of we knew what we were doing, but it was all just something I had in my head. And I knew that because I'm only having to communicate to one other person to make this, there's no need for a script. A script is literally a document that is supposed to communicate with and inspire a cast and crew to do their best work. But here, I really only had to convince one person. Are you in? Do you want to do this?
Yeah.
There was no need for a script. We just shot it. We did it. And again, it was one of those kind of smaller, lower stakes projects where I shot it on the iPhone. And I think that, it was just a very cathartic experience. And I don't really think, because even now when I'm thinking about why would I decide to do that? And I honestly don't really know. Some things you just do because, and again, from the outside, when someone is going through just a hard thing in their life, a medical thing or any big kind of life change, something, a lot of times from the outside, people will look at it and go, they're acting very strangely, but you don't really know how you're going to react until you're there,
Yeah.
And, thankfully, I think I could have dealt with it in an unhealthier way, so to speak.
Yeah.
Making a short film is probably not one of the worst things you can do as a reaction to something like that. So, I'm proud of it. I'm happy with it. It's not really something that, we didn't make this to tell people this was based on a true story or anything like that.
Yeah.
It just sort of is a little short film that has a horror
it
element
stands
to it.
on its own as a good piece.
And it's not even necessarily about literally what I went through at all. It's just more, for me, it's very clear, that where it all came from and that it was a way for me to process that and deal with it.
Yeah.
And then we got another little short film out of it. It's great.
Yeah. So something I see across your work is whether you're doing kind of that real drama, horror, vulnerable truth storytelling, or you're doing something more like Tracy Buckles that's got that fantasy and sci-fi kind of elements. You have this way of combining realistic day-to-day life with an otherworldly magical realism with a little bit of a wink or a sparkle in the eye or a kind of an observational nature while it stays very visceral. And I think your most recent project does all of those really well. And it's kind of taken things to the next level. You have very beautiful visuals, and the storytelling is really abstract in a very beautiful way. Can you talk about Judged?
Yeah, so Judged is the latest short film that we pretty much just wrapped up. I mean, we shot it late last year. We're putting the final finishing touches on it right now, but it's pretty much done. It is, I think it's really the first major project that we've done since Tracy Buckles, that web series, and since I moved to LA. Also, it's like kind of the big project. Like, again, some of the other projects I've done since I've lived here, I've mainly been writing and doing these creative exercises. They're very low stakes, but here was something that I was really passionate about, and I knew it was going to take considerable work and resources to really bring this thing to life, you know. But essentially, the setup of Judged is it's about a therapist who hires a sex worker to pretend to be his client's dead wife, so that this client and this woman essentially can work out some unresolved issues. And it just turns into pretty much what I consider like a surreal drama in the end. But I do think it's beautifully shot, you know, and I think it is, I mean, going back to all these major projects that I've worked on over the last 10 years, really it's the same people I've been working with, you know, the same core group of people. And that same core group of people really kind of showed up and did some of their best work, you know, that I've ever seen in Judged. So it was very, very cool to be a part of that. And I just think collectively all of us who worked on that project really kind of came out of it feeling like no matter what this end product is, which is kind of a weird thing, honestly.
Yeah.
It's a strange, surreal little short. But I think, so, you know, hopefully people will dig in and they'll get on the vibes of this short that we made. But I think even if it turns out that people don't, it was such an amazing experience making it. Just the process of making it was in and of itself that brought a sense of fulfillment, I think, to, I know it did for me, but based on the conversations I've had with the cast and crew, you know, I think that they feel the same way. And, but yes, I do think it was kind of a culmination of a lot of work we've done over many years. And so, for example, like the director of photography that I worked with all the way back from Nicolife, his name is Jason Kaiser, he and the team that he put together, you know, honestly, these visuals are just some of the most spectacular stuff that I've ever been a part of.
It's so beautiful. And he filmed this on a special camera, yes? Can you talk about that?
I mean, if you wanted to have the details about that, we should probably need to be talking to Jason. But it was one of those like Blackmagic 4K cameras. I don't know the exact details of it, but because the way I usually communicate with Jason is not necessarily in those technical details.
Sure.
It's more kind of bigger picture, you know, like for example, like one of the creative choices we made, or the two of the big creative choices we made was to shoot it in black and white, which is something that I love black and white films, but I usually feel like I never thought I would do anything in black and white because I actually love color too. It's such an important tool, you know. Yeah. So to strip something out of color, you got to do that for a good reason. But that was something that we decided for various artistic and creative reasons. But the other thing we decided was to shoot it with an ultra-wide lens.
Okay.
And like extremely wide. Yeah. And, you know, that is something that is interesting because it doesn't always render the human face in the most like aesthetically pleasing way, you know? And yet this was really, when it comes down to it, a short with about two people in a small room, you know? But so just the way the camera moves and the way it interacts with the actors and how they're framed, it all kind of is dictated by this this type of lens that we use,
Yeah.
And the black and white photography. So
Yeah.
there was sort of like some pretty big creative choices we made early on that shaped the look of it.
Right.
But the exact technical details
That's more
of
what
it,
I wanted to get to. Was
yeah, that is something that Jason would be able to speak to, and that I
Well, and I think that you,
can't.
as the director, effectively used the technology to give us that feel. And then you do little things like establishing the security camera, and then we switch to the security camera point of view. And then we've got very, very intimate shots with up in the actor's personal space together. And you have two beautiful people on this kind of, not warped, but kind of pulled kind of framing. So it gives you a very different perspective of what they're going through psychologically as they move through space. And
Yes.
then the ending shot of the tree in the park is just gorgeous.
Yeah.
And very powerful in context. So it's very effective and beautiful.
Yeah, I'm very happy with it, and I'm curious what I mean, we're gonna do like a cast and crew screening here next month, but it's like, yeah, as more people kind of get to check it out, it'll be interesting to see what people make of it, because it is, I will say, like, it's one of the few, because I really wanted this short to be, it was just a very personal project that I wasn't that interested in necessarily what the general population would think of it. I really just wanted to know if the cast and crew that I was going to work with, if they were passionate about it.
Yeah.
And if they were passionate, then that was going to be enough for us to be able to translate something, to the screen that could be interesting,
Yeah.
But I sent this script that I wrote to a lot of people, and I would say like a good 80 to 90% of people just didn't know what to make of it. I mean, they didn't know, they didn't even know how to give feedback on it. It was just like, I don't know what this thing is.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
good
it was, I'm grateful I got to read it early on, and I think it was one of the most striking scripts I've ever read, in that it was such a distinct point of view, such a different story than any story I've read, but I'm attracted to that, so I thought it was really exciting. Mm-hmm. So it was really cool to see it from script to screen and go through that process. It was great.
Yeah. And I definitely think the final product is I do think the final product is more approachable than the script, in some ways.
I think it has a continuity that makes sense once you have the humanity of the actors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And once you kind of get the full vision and the scope of the of how we decide to tell the story, and it's embodied by these actors, I do think it makes it a little more understandable. But I mean, I still think you're not really going to be spoon-fed with what this thing is and what it means, and it's just one of those types of stories that leaves a lot of things open to interpretation. But we love working on it, so.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I love about your work, is that you have decided that why you want to make things is you want it to be a fulfilling process, and you want to work with the people you want to work with, and that gives your work a sense of freedom, because you're not aiming for commercial kind of traditional pathways. You're aiming for creating art that you're excited about, and everyone who's on the project is excited about, and that comes through in the work, which makes me more excited about it in the end. Just pretty cool.
Yeah, that is, I mean, exactly what you just said there. That is pretty much my focus now. I mean, it wasn't always like that, right?
Sure, yeah.
I've had periods of time where I was very focused on trying to write something either for other directors or other producers, or trying to get the attention of people, that had gotten further than me in the industry, and it was very much like focused on what other people might like,
Yeah.
But more recently, I do think that I just go back to the people I like working with, and that are, extremely talented, and I really just want to continue working with them. So my main concern is always like, can I convince them that this is a good idea? And if I can't, then I'm not going to make it. And if I can, if I'm passionate about it and they're passionate about it, then that's really all I need to move forward. Mm-hmm. And then hopefully with time, we'll find a bigger and bigger audience that are kind of are locked into what we're doing. Mm-hmm. But that I just sort of trust that process to take care of itself, I suppose.
Yeah, I love that. What is your creator's challenge?
Oh yeah, so I was thinking about this. Honestly, like, because I was thinking about a challenge. I mean, this is really mainly useful, I think, to filmmakers, people who really actually want to make things. And that is, if you're just starting out, then what I would do is make a list of the people in your life, could be friends, coworkers, anyone, and particularly people who you know are creative, and then write down their name, and then you write down what their creative passion is. Maybe they have a few, but maybe what their main one is, And because what you really need to do in the beginning is you need to start building your team. And the way to do that, ironically, is you have to find people that are good at things that you're not good at, Mm-hmm. So it's like, as a writer-director, it's fun to talk to other writer-directors, But they're not going to help you make your movie. Yeah. They're making their own movies, know? So really you need to find people in all kinds of disciplines of art. That's the beauty of filmmaking, And what you'll notice is that a lot of people are creative in their lives, and a lot of that creativity corresponds to different roles within filmmaking. You may just not think about it, but it's like, oh, that friend over there who's a musician and a composer, that friend over here that's, is really into fashion and is like the best at going thrifting. And all these can be different roles that make sense within within a film production. So that's what I would recommend, is that instead of always, trying to reach out to the next, to people that are kind of like ahead of you in the industry, is look at the people you actually know, look at the resources you have, and try to figure out what people's what their genuine passions are, and how you can inspire and encourage them to work on your projects. That's it.
I love it. I think you're so good at building a team of people that are excited to work with you, and that comes out in the ending project. So that's perfect. Where can people find you or watch your stuff?
Well, I don't know. Hopefully you can maybe include some links.
Absolutely.
But
I'll put it in the show notes.
Some of these web series that we mentioned, like Nicolife and Tracy Buckles, have their own websites, and then the rest of it, some of the other shorts and things aren't quite publicly available yet. So because they're, some of them are kind of like entering into film festivals and stuff. Yeah. So, but yeah, you can. I have my own website, personal website, that maybe you can include on there that people can check out, and yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Robin. It's always a delight to
talk to thanks. I'm gonna take one final sip of my oatmeal cappuccino. Cheers.
Cheers. Join the community and share your creative challenges on Instagram and Facebook at Creators Cafe by Kika Labs. And also check out my website, kikalabs.com, KIKALABS.com, to sign up for the mailing list so you always know when a new podcast is released, and to check out my coaching and digital courses to help you be a more confident and joyful creator.